So, I just made a review of the first two episodes of Netflix's live-action Avatar, and basically it was a quite solid and honestly at least very decent start to the story, though a lot of plot and lore concepts were indeed better depicted here. There was some questionable writing, especially in terms of the portrayal of adapted characters like Katara and Sokka and even Iroh. Not to mention the dialogue drags on a bit too much sometimes, giving too much detailed exposition and descriptions. But now we move on to my review analysis of episodes 3 through 6. I was going to make my videos 2 episodes each, but I changed my mind since I want to discuss other things aside from Avatar. So stay tuned for my Alistair and Overlords video on Has-Been Hotel if you're interested in that. Anyway, back to Atla. A lot of exciting things, from a little change to Zuko's flashback, Bumi's character change, Roku, Katara's mom's sacrifice, Zhao, and so much more. I divvied up episodes 3 through 6 into 3 parts or arcs for discussion: the Omashu arc, Spirit World arc, and Blue Spirit or Zuko arc. The Omashu arc has a lot to be discussed, as many characters were in these 2 episodes alone, and the dynamics and writing of the characters and plot points had a lot of changes themselves. So, without anything further, fellow mind, be comfortable in any what way and welcome yourself here in mine mind. So, the Omashu arc actually combines 3 separate arcs or episodes from the original show: Jet and his freedom fighters, the city of Omashu, and the Mechanist at the Northern Air Temple. Now, did they actually manage to make all of these different stories fit? I would say they actually did a remarkable job. A brief overview of things they combined: Jet and his freedom fighters had a story about a resistance group against the Fire Nation, and in the end, Jet betrays Katara's trust by planning to harm innocent Fire Nation civilians. The Mechanist episode also has a twist reveal, as the Mechanist was actually lending his innovations and inventions to Fire Nation officials, but with the aid of Avatar Aang, managed to turn away from them and defeat the forces of the Fire Nation. And the episode in Omashu features Aang and Bumi's reunion and lessons for Aang as the Avatar. Now, we see most of these concepts in the live-action Omashu arc, not to mention they even sprinkled in Iroh's backstory, which we will get into later as it deserves its own portion of discussion, and the combination of these different things was done very well actually. The confusion about who actually is betraying Omashu, is it Jet or the Mechanist, and how Omashu is a center for refuge in the Earth Kingdom, was made into a one cohesive story. I was really impressed with how they managed to combine all these different episodes and stories into one 2 episode arc and setting. Now, looking at the characters present, we actually first see Ozai in what was revealed to be Azula herself. The acting was indeed spot on. Both of these actors captured the, well, character they are portraying. The gravity of Ozai's voice and his movements very subtly intimidating, and Azula's slight sass and sadistic grins were amazing. Also, how she changed to cunning princess from her guise of an innocent, timid palace servant to rat out the rebellion was such a great performance. Then we have Zuko and Iroh, amazing performances as well, on the large. Iroh was really better presented and acted this time around compared to the previous episodes though. Their take of a more depressed Iroh is interesting, still chained to the destruction he caused at Ba Sing Se and the death of his own son. But the actor did indeed nail this version, indeed especially in the flashback scene, though more on that in a bit. And for Zuko, the anger and determination are still there indeed, though his delivery in Iroh's flashback at the Lu Ten casket scene was not quite it, let's just say. It sounded more robotic than the awkward and hesitant person he was trying to portray.
He said it should belong to someone destined to do great things. Gave me strength.
The music though, let's move on because I don't want to cry. More on that scene later. Sokka, interestingly, instead of leaning into being a warrior, leans more into being an engineer. This is not bad actually, but the omission of his warrior arc and aspect of personality is quite disappointing still. And not much to mention on Katara and Aang. I don't see much noteworthy to be discussed really. Their acting was well enough, and it's more on the interactions between Bumi and Aang that interests me. Speaking of King Bumi,
Hello,
the
Aang.
actor did very well as well. I do indeed say, and the detail of him actually becoming insane was good for the story, though its execution with the direction is very flawed. I don't feel it was impactful as one would have hoped. His interactions with Aang were for me a hit and miss. The dining scene I was thoroughly impressed by. However, the hallway scene of him apparently trying to teach a lesson to Aang was very forced and rushed for me. You know, I would like to make a reimagining of that scene. But now let's head back to Iroh. As I said, I really love the impact on Iroh's character here, cause the comments from the Earthbending guards and his flashback really paints Iroh as someone who has been disillusioned greatly by war and has suffered equally greatly by the destruction of it. And the sad, empty look on his face as he understands the pain he inflicted on that Earth Kingdom soldier and his brother, I think it was, and remembered thus his own loss at the very same event, was indeed impactful. Not to mention the orchestral version of Leaves from the Vine playing at the background. It's making me tear bend. But another thing is that they made Iroh and Ozai interact, which I plan to make probably into its own video. But all you need to know is that it was great seeing their dynamic with one another, since in the original show they never even spoke to each other like at all, which was one of the only few mistakes of the original show. Now, before we go into the next arc, a few more comments on the plot changes. I do like the reveal in the end that it was actually Jet and his group that caused the bombings and not the spies themselves, which is subtly clever on a writing standpoint, as why would the spies want their presence to be known? It was not like they were bombing strategic locations so that the Fire Nation can invade Omashu better and more easily. No, the explosions were very residential. At the very least, they were just trying to keep down morale or something. King Bumi, as actually crazed, however, was actually very good as well. His long tenure as the Earth King, having to make hard decisions for over 100 years, was indeed a very brilliant twist and adds flavor to Bumi's character actually. Though how Aang convinces him to have hope again was... I don't even know what to say about that, to be honest. Like, what?
You think like a child.
And this line from Katara was a bit
That wasn't
iffy.
you. That was me. All
Okay,
those
Katara, the original ending with
Jet,
Jet
you
was
monster!
still better,
This was a
basically.
victory, Katara. Remember that.
Yeah, this arc was a mixed bag as well, though I still thoroughly enjoyed it. It concluded with Omashu preparing for a Fire Nation siege, though Bumi's renewed vigor to fight might actually be a downgrade from what we originally got in the original show, cause he might actually decide to fight the Firebenders head on rather than his very clever strategy of waiting and doing nothing, which was an earthbending philosophy known as the neutral Jing, seen in the original show, which demonstrated his weird wisdom and ingenuity in warfare. But I was delighted that Sai's connections to the spies also helped them weed them out in the end, which was honestly a nice payoff. Anyway, as much as the arc was a pleasant mixed bag, but still pleasant nonetheless, the Spirit World episodes was, well, very below mid in my opinion. And I hate to say it, indeed felt so rushed. Not to mention another particular failing. Though I do like the more scenes of Iroh and Zuko, there we have little problem. The gang and their events, though not so much. The Spirit World felt a bit weird to me here, almost like it was plopped out of nowhere and presented too on the nose. I didn't quite feel the same wonder and ethereal nature as I felt in the original. The spirits were fine, especially Ko the Face Stealer, but it just doesn't seem to be written as good as the original. Though the flashbacks while Ko was hunting them, now that was interesting, especially Katara's flashback with her mom. I truly think, compared to the original show, what transpired with their mother here was more impactful and truly heart-wrenching as a scene than the vague but still sad, don't get me wrong, original in the original show. To see how helpless Katara is and how painful it is that she was indirectly the cause of her mother's death because she tried to waterbend to defend her was just... But seriously, when I saw their mom pretend to waterbend so the firebender won't discover and keep looking for Katara, and then she got scorched, I felt that sacrifice so much. I'm actually on the verge of tears while I was writing this. And about Sokka's flashback, I'm not really that enthusiastic about it. It's just a bit iffy for me, not really sure what I feel about it. It's just fine. It's basically mid, basically. Anyway, so we have a great portrayal of Ko, a horrible presentation of the spirit world, but a great and more impactful Katara mom flashback. We then get to see what we have all been waiting for, the great and wise master of all four elements, predecessor avatar to Aang, Avatar Roku. Who was also written horribly here.
Forgive me! I couldn't resist. It's good to see you, Aang.
They made Roku this bland joke, courtesy of the highest degree. I think you get the point of how I feel here. They just traded an improvement on one part to utterly diminish another. This whole Fire Nation temple is so rushed. It was just a plopped setting to get Aang into Zuko's hands, and then Zuko and Aang into Zhao's hands, and then whatever. It feels so fake. This is just the sheer foolishness to make Roku a comedic relief. And the whole scene looks like something out of those cheaply made Asian fantasy series. To be honest, I would know. I don't want to dwell on this anymore too much. Let's move on, I suppose. This is really where everything started to show its cracks, let's just say. The writing is really hit and miss with this show. Anyhow, Aang and Gyatso share a lovely little sentimental advice chat. Some depth was given more to Ko by very budget, not Roku, which was actually a good concept for the lore, but was just not delivered, presented well. And did they just leave Heibai there without resolution? So basically the villagers are still screwed. Though I am curious about how Gyatso managed to manifest himself and why later on he just left. That's for another video, I suppose, maybe. But let's move on to something much more interesting, frankly, and frankly satisfying. In the Blue Spirit arc, or Zuko arc, we actually see how more cunning and cutthroat Zhao is compared to his original hot-headed iteration. He betrays Zuko, and the way he got his promotion was frankly more sensible here, as it wasn't just a random thing that Ozai just suddenly promoted him, but something we more clearly see he earned by serving Ozai and Azula. So that's one, but his plan to kill Zuko is quite cunning as well. He lured him and was 3 steps ahead. I do say they did wonderful with their own take on Zhao here, though personally I still find the original much more preferable and compelling as a character, at least for me. I could go deeper on this, but mayhaps in its own video. The really satisfying And one of the greatest improvements, however, on the original show by this adaptation was Zuko's flashback. For the most part, all were the same, except for a very interesting detail when Zuko was banished for speaking out against a plan to use new Fire Nation military recruits as bait for the Earth Kingdom soldiers. Those very recruits, the 41st Division if I'm not mistaken, in his banishment, were given to Zuko as his very own crew.
You are not to set a foot within our borders until this task is completed, under threat of the severest of penalties.
Ozai, you can't!
Brother, it's done. Oh, and since you're so concerned with the 41st Division, take them with you as your crew.
This was a very impactful reveal, especially to the crew whom Iroh revealed this to. Way better than the original, since the reveal directly impacted the crew themselves and showed that even with how somewhat reckless Zuko was seeming, it was actually him who was the reason why the crew was still alive all this while. This gives a great realization to Zuko's crew, and once he returns from freeing the Avatar from Zhao's prison, he has gained a great respect through gratitude from them. So much poetry, it made me honestly cry when I saw the scene of them saluting him back to the ship. You deserve it, Zuzu. Now that's some beautiful writing right there. I really like this. I might also give it its own video in the future, perhaps. This version not only impacts the audience, but the characters in the show themselves, changing both the audience's and the characters' demeanor and perspective on Zuko. This middle part of the live action was a really mixed bag. From the heights of the great Zuko flashback and Katara's mom's sacrifice, to the absurdly awful portrayal and blatant disrespect to Avatar Roku's character. This middle part had some pretty solid concepts and delivery of some of those changes, but others were iffy at best and the showing of the cracks in the writing at worst. But what about you, my fellow mind? What do you think about the middle episodes and arcs of Avatar's live-action series? Freely express yourself below. I would appreciate that. May we meet again soon. You are always welcome here in mine mind.